Greetings and salutations, knowledge seekers, and welcome to this video. Today I would like to talk to you about something that we all have in common, our desire to achieve instant gratification and how it's detrimental to our psychology and overall mental state because it constantly leaves us disappointed and wanting more. That is why it's very important to discuss a simple shift in perspective that will allow us to move past our continuous strive to reach short-term goals. Let's get into it. I think we all in our modern society have this disease of instant gratification to various extents. All of us would like to achieve results instantly, particularly in an era where entertainment and attention is everything. We want to be instantly famous. We want to be instantly successful at our job. We want to be instantly successful as a partner, as a husband, as a father, as a wife, as a mother, right? All of these things we feel should come naturally to us because the internet is continuously bombarding us with people that make it seem so easy, at least on paper, in video form. And life is hard. We need to realize that. And it takes time to achieve the results that we desire, even if it would be nicer if that time can be a lot shorter than perhaps what's reasonable. But I want to put things in a little bit of a context and a little bit of perspective. How did people live, let's say 500 or 2000 years ago? They had completely different lives, right? They had to struggle for basically everything that they achieved. Every little aspect of their life was a continuous battle against the elements and against the environment. And against other people in their surrounding as well, right? That hasn't necessarily changed for some of us, but it's usually not life and death. And a typical life of a young person would include something that we call rite of passage, which can vary immensely between different cultures and between different time points in history. But if you want to go back, let's say a couple thousand years ago, that would usually include a young boy, 10, 11, 12 years old, going into the wilderness with a old man that usually was not their father, right? Somebody else from the tribe, from the village, from the small settlement that doesn't have the same kind of bond as a father has to his own child. So they would be a lot tougher, a lot more honest with the child about their performance. So that individual would take your kid, imagine that. That individual would take your son at, let's say, 10 years old, to the woods and teach him how to hunt. And usually that process would involve significant risk for the life of the child, right? There would be a lot of instances in which children would die in these kind of rites of passage. And that's kind of the point. It had to be hard. It had to be a ritual that would weed out the weak in order to ensure the longer-term survival of the tribe and the settlement in general. Compare this to our current existence, right? Very different. Or if you want to go back, let's say 1,000 years or 1,500 years, young male adults at that age would do an apprenticeship. That's what an apprenticeship was. Now we only have them in fancy big companies where you sit behind a desk. Before you would actually move to a craftsman, if you're lucky, because usually parents could not support all of their kids. So if they could find an apprenticeship and move with a craftsman of some type, whether it was a cobbler or a blacksmith or a swordsmith, many different options at that point in time. And they would live with the stranger and learn their trade and would do that for years, right? There would be a contract signed and there would be engagements and commitments that both the child and old craftsman would have to abide by, and the family of the child as well, right? And that built a different type of character in people. That completely shifted expectations, or our expectations are now completely shifted from the way things were back then. Nobody was expecting things to work instantly. Nobody was expecting to just know how to do things and for their life to fit in place perfectly. That was completely out of the realm of possibility. You had to struggle for everything that you did. And we've kind of gone away from that. We're not that type of society anymore, thankfully. But we have, the pendulum have swung way too much in the other direction. We feel like everything should just be given to us, and that's not really reality. And also, it's not really realistic to expect that the outcomes that you desire in the short term are going to have the positive long-term implications that you project for yourself, right? That you plan for in your mind. That's not really how life works either. There's way too many variables that we don't have control over. There's way too many different scenarios that we cannot foresee for the future. So all we are doing is we're tempting fate. We are playing with reality, and we are perceiving ourselves as this overseer of existence. But in fact, we have no actual control over how things happen to us. Because you never know if an outcome, let's say you don't get a promotion next week, or let's say your girlfriend breaks up with you. These are disastrous outcomes in the short term, right? But maybe your girlfriend wasn't the one, and maybe in 2 weeks you meet the love of your life. And if she didn't break up with you, that would never happen. And maybe you didn't get the promotion, but then in 3 months there's another opportunity in the same company, or an opportunity in a different company, and that one fits your profile much better in your future career aspirations, right? Life is a completely unpredictable journey. We need to embrace that. And a good example of that comes from a story that I heard the other day, or I read it in a book. It's called Death in Baghdad, and it's about this rich Persian man and his servant. The rich Persian walks around this big, beautiful garden, and he meets his favorite servant who looks scared out of his mind. So the rich man asks him, "What happened? What frightened you?" And the servant responds, "I met death here in this very garden. So I have to leave. If you please give me your fastest horse, I would be able to make it to Baghdad by tonight, and I will be safe there." The rich man felt sorry for his servant, so he gave him his best horse, and the servant was on his way. Later on that day, the rich man met Death in his garden and asked him, "What happened? Why did you frighten my servant?" Death looked at him a little bit puzzled and responded earnestly, "I had no intention of frightening him. In fact, I was pretty surprised to meet him here. I was supposed to take him tonight in Baghdad." So you never really know what an outcome of a situation is until you live out the rest of your life. You cannot judge things in the short term on how they progress. And I know that it's difficult, but if we start embracing that reality, we're not in control. There are many other circumstances that affects the outcomes of the outcome of our existence. I think that will make it a little bit easier for us to let go of this continuous strive to achieve things in the short term and just enjoy our lives. Thank you guys for watching and listening. I hope you like my content. If you do, please like and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.